Okay, we're getting up into the 1800s. Okay, we have Red River Valley, big fertile plain. We got the Mississippi running down here and the Missouri running up here. The Cheyenne runs and goes into there. Okay, now for a long time, first we'll start. The Métis Indians, or peoples, let's say, up in Hudson Bay, it's still Selkirk colony, but they've been hauling with ox carts 400 miles, and rather than go through the valley, they go up on the high ground, come down, cross the Cheyenne Delta right here, and I'll have movies of the crossing later, and go down to St. Paul. So it's a 400-mile trip on them old ox carts made out of wood. They would go in long trains, up to 200 carts at a time. And it was said that you could hear them coming along before you saw them. Them wooden axles squeaking. They wear out 3 or 4 axles on the trip and just make new ones as they go along. But you could hear them squealing for miles away. Okay, they'd make that trip. Now this worked for a long time, but of course it isn't the best way of doing it. It's a long, slow process, but they had to get the produce out of here. Though the Hudson Bay Company was getting tired of supporting this Selkirk community because, these Scots and Irishmen weren't pulling their weight, so they were kind of a burden. You had to feed them. And this was starting to cause a little trouble because they were taking so many buffalo out of here. The Indians that lived on the other side were getting a little pissed off about this. And eventually there got to be trouble, but we'll leave that go for now. What happened next was the Louisiana Purchase. Now, for years we'd been bugging Napoleon, or the French, which owned Louisiana, which goes from the Gulf Coast all the way up into Canada. We wanted to buy New Orleans so that we would have a safe entry into the Mississippi because we needed that Mississippi. Well, he kind of hemmed and hawed, didn't want to sell it. Well, then finally he gave it to the Spaniards, figuring that they would torment the British a little bit because he was kind of busy over in Europe, tormenting the English there. Well, the Spaniards really didn't do anything with it, so he took it back. And nobody here knew what was going on, but he took it back and sold it to us for like a nickel an acre. Biggest real estate deal in history. So all of a sudden we've got a huge piece of land, but we don't own Rupert's land. That's still English. But we own everything from the Mississippi to the Rockies, way up into Canada, except for Rupert's land, which is a thorn in the side. Okay, now I've drawn in the 49th parallel. Like I say, this Louisiana came way up in here. Well, after we made that deal, and Lewis and Clark poked around in here, there still remained the Oregon territory, which was not like Oregon now. It was a big piece of land way up into Canada. That was still up for grabs. They were arguing over it, who owned it. Spain wanted it because it tied into their stuff. England wanted it, and France, of course, is always getting involved too, because it tied in with their Louisiana. So after we made this deal, and we figured out, this is ours. Now here at the 49th parallel, we cut a deal with England. We said, okay, we'll give you this up here if we can have this down here. So all of a sudden, the Red River Valley, the southern part, the area where I live, we are now part of the United States. Though we don't know it, still Indian territory as far as anybody is concerned. But Canada is growing. And this northern part of what was Rupert's land, eventually Hudson Bay Company, though they still controlled the whole area, they sold the land off to the Canadian government. So that became part of Canada, but that happened a little later. But in this deal too, now like I say, everybody was fighting over Oregon. And what we did, since we were on good dealing terms with Canada, and since we had Louisiana after Napoleon had his rummage sale, we figured, okay, we'll get together with the biggest crook in the world, which is England. We don't normally steal land, we like to buy it. Even if the title's a little shaky, if we buy it and we got a piece of paper, it's ours. So we got together with England and said, we will split Oregon. Everything south of 49 is ours, everything north is yours. Now, this deal might not have went through if we'd have known the Russians were going to sell off Alaska. Because if we could have hung on to this piece, we'd have had the whole damn coast. And I'd still be English. But that was in the future yet. So we're happy to have Oregon. So all of a sudden we're growing. But now down here, these Métis making their little journey, eventually this gets, it lasts about 20 some years. In the like 1840s, there gets to be a bit of a squabble. And some Métis and some Sioux kill each other and things get a little tense. And the Métis that got down to St. Paul were a little uncomfortable about trying to get back through. So they carved a new trail from the south up to the Pembina area, through the woods. And that got to me the main highway. And this kind of lost use, except it got to be later a great military road. But for now, this is going to work until they get steamboats on the Red. And that's coming up, but I think I'll leave it at that for now. We're American, though we don't know it. The trail is gradually getting into disuse, though it's still, you know, like I say, a big hunting ground. It's just that the main supply route now for the area up around Hudson Bay is coming directly through the woods. Well, not directly, hell of a road, but... And we've got all this land in a good port and don't have to worry about it being closed on us, because that was the big fear. If that port got closed, which, you know, things change hands all the time, we never knew what was going to happen. So we're good there, except on the other side of the Rockies. Spain is running amok over there, but they'll be dealt with later, but not by me. That's not my problem. I'm concerned with what goes on up here. But right now, we're Americans, though the people who live here don't know it. And won't know it for quite a while yet. And that comes as a horrible surprise.